So let's understand how we are going through this video. This video is divided into two sections. First, we are going through the cheat sheet where we will talk about these 40 plus services with one line explanation. So you can use this cheat sheet before going through the exam. So it will help you to remember these services and how it works and what exactly these services are, where we can use it. So we will start from the AWS architecture. As you know, AWS is spreading, or we can say is available globally. So it is divided into regions and availability zones. So what exactly the region is? Region is a physical location. Okay, it's a physical location around the world where we have clustered data center. That means these clusters of data center is a discrete, or we can say the physical building where we have independent power, cooling, physical security, everything is there. When we club these data center together from the one location, logically it become a availability zone. And when we have multiple availability zone, then we have a region. So how it is structured? It is structured like this. If it is a region, then we have AZ under it. And even these AZ are the logical unit where we have physical data center inside, and these data center has independent power, cooling, everything is separate. So the thing is, when we are looking for redundant environment, we either use to host this environment in multiple availability zone, or if we want a regional based disaster recovery plan, then we will host our application or the infrastructure or the environment in multi-region environment. Means we will host this environment in multiple regions. So we have described what is actually the region and what is availability zone. Then we will talk about the AWS features. What are the features we are covering here? We will talk about the capex and opex. Let's just understand quickly. Capex is a capital expenditure which we normally have to spend in front. It means in our organization where we are talking about the on-prem environment, what will happen? We have to purchase everything in advance. Then we will use it and we will spend opex on top of that. But in the cloud, when we move to the cloud, we no need to worry about the capex because it is taken care by cloud service provider. We just need to pay as opex. Whatever service we will use, we will need to pay for that one. Then it's about reliability. Reliability is something we have the system. If something happened wrong with the existing system, we always have another system ready. So we can say our environment is more reliable. So AWS provide reliability. Also, it has high computing resources available with AWS. So as per our requirement, we can have high performance environment. And whenever we are exhausted with our resources and we are looking for enhancing the resources or increasing the resources, or sometimes our resources are free and we don't want to pay for that one, then we can release those resources. That comes under scalability. So AWS provide high scalability. Scalability, we have two types of scalability. We have horizontal and vertical. As the name suggests, horizontal is something, it will increase like this way. Suppose our application is running on 2 servers and now we can see there are more traffic. We want to add more servers, then we can add on. So it comes under horizontal scaling. When we are looking for a server where we have the resources like 2 CPU and 4 GB of RAM, and then we see there is less performance of this machine and we want to increase the performance. So what we will do, we will increase the resource on the same machine. So what we will add, let's suppose we are adding 2 more CPU. So now it becomes 4 CPU of this machine and we are adding 4 GB of RAM, then it will become 8 GB of RAM. This type of increasing the resources comes under vertical scaling. This is how we define it. Security, yes, they have the expert team to take care all about the security from the physical layer to the application layer or the presentation layer. Everything is secured in AWS. So it provides high security, highly secure environment. Now we will discuss about the AWS management. That means how we can manage the resources or the services in AWS. So commonly we have 3 options. We can manage services through CLI, that is command line interface, where we can execute some command or run some script, and through this way we can connect with the service and manage those services. Then we have AWS management console, which is GUI. It's like a portal where we can log in and see all the services, view all the services and manage those services. But in the console we have another option, that is for mobile application. Yes, but here we can't manage all the services. So there are some selected services which we can use through the mobile application. So we can manage like our billings on the go. While we are traveling, we have the mobile, we can just access that application console and we can manage the billing of it. Then we have AWS SDK, that is like interacting way through the programming. Here we can write our code in popular programming languages like Java, JavaScript, Python or Go language. So there are multiple. Anyway, we are going to describe these all services mentioned here in details while we will go through the questions. Next, we have the compute section. In the compute section, we will cover the questions related to AWS EC2. EC2 is nothing but a virtual machine in the cloud, which is available, or we can say that we can access this machine through the internet. Next, we need to talk about AWS Elastic Beanstalk. AWS Elastic Beanstalk is an application container for deploying and managing applications. Next, we have AWS ECS, that is Elastic Container Service. And this service is also known as Amazon ECS. It allows us to easily run and manage Docker containers. So it helps us to manage Docker containers across a cluster of Amazon EC2 instances. Next, we have AWS Lambda, that is serverless technology. What it do, it's like a function, or we can say the code we need to run to perform our task. Here, as it is serverless, let me write it here, it is serverless. That it means that we no need to worry about the underlying infrastructure, means on the server where we are running our code. It is will be configured, or we can say procured automatically through by AWS, and we no need to pay anything for the servers on which our code is running. Then where we are getting charged, right? So how it will be charged? It's based on the request, how many times we are running the code, and the duration, how long our code will run. So on that case, we need to pay to AWS. Now we will talk about one more important section, or we can say the core service, that is storage. Let's understand one by one. Here we will talk about these five storage services. These are the important one where we will cover the question. So if we'll talk about in short, like elastic block storage, what actually it is? Whenever we install any instance, okay, when we create any instance, so you know your OS will be installed somewhere in the storage, right? So this type of storage which is attached to our instance is known as elastic block store. And this is very high performance, and we have two types of we can configure. Either we can take HDD like in our laptop or PC, or it can be of SDD type. So we'll talk in details while go through the questions. Now we have Amazon S3. Amazon S3 storage is kind of a storage which is used for frequent access, or we can host static websites there. Or we can say how this S3 stands for. It's a simple storage service, that's why it is short. In short, we known as S3. So Amazon simple storage service can be used to store and retrieve any amount of data. So it can be used for any purpose like video, text, any type of data can be stored here. If we'll talk about next service, that is Amazon EFS, that is Elastic File Service, Elastic File System, sorry. So Elastic File System is a file storage service for Amazon Elastic Cloud Compute, like for EC2s. So it's like a file server in AWS, we can say. Next, we have AWS Storage Gateway. AWS Storage Gateway is used in hybrid environment. So whenever we have any environment in our on-prem and we are looking for a disaster recovery setup, and we want that setup should be in cloud, then at that time we can use AWS Storage Gateway. Or we can say when we are running application in our organization, or we can say in on-prem, and we want to use the feasibility of cloud storage, in that case also we can use AWS Storage Gateway. Next is Amazon Glacier, that is used when we want to keep data for longer period of time. That means whenever we need to use it for the archive purpose, archive data which is not frequently used, we can keep it for longer period of time. So whenever we are looking for cheap solution for that one, then it is Amazon Glacier. So whenever you see anything in the questions related to cost perspective, or we want to optimize the cost, then we will go for Amazon Glacier. Now we will talk about the security services, what exactly these services are. So here we are talking about the key management services. So we have two key management services here. One is AWS KMS, that is stands for key management service. Next we have AWS Cloud HSM, that is hardware security module. So both the services used for key management and used for data encryption. Then what is the difference between those? Encryption. Okay, so then what is the difference? It is dedicated for single tenant, and AWS KMS can be used for multi-tenant. And both the services can be used for generating usage or replace keys within AWS. Next we have AWS Shield service. AWS Shield service is used to protect our environment. When I'm talking about the environment, this component can be EC2, your virtual machine, it can be your load balancer, it can be anything related to your environment from DDoS attack. DDoS is stand for distributed denial of service. How it works: whenever we want to, suppose I'm a hacker or some unauthorized person, I want that your servers should not work. So what I'll do, through the script I'll send multiple traffic to your server. So what, as we know, our server works in a way like first in first out. So if you will get more requests from me, then you are not able to cater the original request or authentic request. In that way our service get hang, and in this case it will not work. So AWS Shield help us to protect from DDoS attacks. Next we have AWS WAF, that is Web Application Firewall. As you know, it helps us to protect our web application from the attacks. What types of attacks we are having? We have the attacks like CVE, that is for, it stands for common vulnerabilities exposure, or it can be SQL injections, or it can be CSS, cross-site scripting. So these, whenever you see these terms, then you can directly go for AWS Web Service. Next we have AWS Messi service. So what exactly the Amazon Messi service is? Amazon Messi is a fully managed data security and data privacy service that uses machine learning, and it will help us to protect our sensitive data in AWS with the matching patterns. Next service we are having Amazon Guard Duty. So what exactly this Amazon Guard Duty service is? Amazon Guard Duty is a threat detection service that continuously monitors our AWS accounts and our workloads in our environment for any malicious activities, and deliver detailed security findings for the visibility and their remediation. So whenever there is any vulnerabilities found or any malicious activities this service found, it helps us to remediate those vulnerabilities. So we will cover the questions related to these services in this video. Next we are talking about the networking services. So let's start from the internet gateway. What exactly it is? Whenever we want to communicate with our instance to the internet, and we want this connection should be bidirectional. Suppose whenever we want to expose our web server to the internet and we want to make communication between that, we will use internet gateway. So just keep in mind, whenever your instance in our AWS environment want to connect to internet, it will, when it is talking about the bidirectional connection, we will use internet gateway, and we need to make sure this instance should have the public IP. So this connection will be through the public IP of this instance. So now let's talk about net gateway, how it works. So this is also used when we need to connect our instance with the internet. The only thing is here we will have only one-way connection, means this instance should be in private subnet. I'm talking about here. Okay, this instance in the internet gateway, it should be in public subnet. Here it should be in private subnet. And when we need to connect this instance to the internet and get downloads, the patches and security updates, in that case we use net gateway. So internet gateway and net gateway help us to connect through the internet. What exactly in the net instance? As here net gateway is managed by AWS. It is fully managed service. It is managed manually. So whenever we create instance through the net AMI, means the template which is can be used for NAT net, and then we configure this instance to work as a net gateway. And here the maintenance of this machine or instance will be done by us. So that is the net instance. What is AWS Direct Connect? AWS Direct Connect is something when we need to connect our organization infrastructure, or we can say on-prem infrastructure, to AWS. In this case we will use AWS Direct Connect. Here we will have the dedicated connection, and it is through the fiber cables. And next part, whenever we want to extend our infrastructure with the cloud, then we will use AWS Direct Connect. Next we have AWS Managed VPN. This service is also used to connect our organization with AWS. The only difference is here we will not have any dedicated connection. It will be through the software defined settings, so through which normally right now when we are doing work from home, we are connecting our environment through the VPN. This is the same. Next we have the security group and network access control list. These both work as a virtual firewall. What is the difference then? Security groups works at the instance level, so we will define security groups here in the instance level, and network access control list will be defined at the subnet level. That means it will be defined at subnet level. Let me write it here. And security groups at the instance level. Next we have VPC. VPC stands for virtual private cloud. So what actually this service is, it helps us to launch AWS resources either in private subnet or the public subnet. That means it is a isolated cloud. So in a region we can create our own VPC, we can provide the subnet range, and then we will provide the subnets, and we will host the instance inside the VPC. So this is how we define the VPC. And what is VPC peering? As we know, we can have VPC, multiple VPC in a single region. Suppose this is region 1 and we have 2 VPC here, and we have another region that is R2. Here also we have 2 VPC. So VPC peering we can have 2 types. In detail we will go through the question. Just understand, whenever we connect the VPC within the same region, it will be known as local VPC peering, and when we connect different VPC from different regions, that will be remote VPC peering. Next we have VPC flow logs. So what exactly it is? So VPC flow logs is a feature that enables us to capture information about the IP address traffic going to and from our network interface in our VPC. So it will be used to capture the information about the IP traffic. Next service we have Elastic Load Balancer. What exactly it is? Load Balancer is something which is we kept it in front of our backend server. These backend server can be your web servers. So we suppose here we have 3 web servers, so we kept one load balancer here. So whenever any client want to communicate these web servers, it will direct this traffic through the load balancer. This request will come to load balancer, and load balancer will check which server is free to cater that request. On the basis of availability, it will send, or it's based on the settings which we define. It can be round robin or highly weighted. It's all depend on the configuration how the traffic will be sent from load balancer to backend servers. Now we have covered all the services in this video. Now we have some concept that we need to understand. Those are the important concept whenever, because in this exam we can get the questions based on scenario, and we need to understand these concepts. So first concept is microservices. So what microservices concept also we can understand through the loosely coupled applications. So there are tight coupled application and loosely coupled application. So if you remember in early days, or we can say traditional environment, we can have the application where all the components are tightly coupled. That means if there is any maintenance to any of the component, we need to shut down or take the downtime for all the components, either it is web server or DB server or some other server belongs to that application. But in loosely coupled environment, what happens? These components are loosely coupled. So if we want to maintain to perform maintenance on one of the component, we just need to shut down the services related to that component until and unless it impact all the application. This way we can use loosely coupled application. Next concept is why to deploy application in multiple availability zones. So whenever we want to make our environment redundant and we are looking for a condition where we can have failure in one availability zone, then we will host our environment or the server in multiple AZ. So between the availability zone, we will have the low latency. Next, we have AWS auto scaling. So auto scaling is something when we need to increase or decrease resource based on the conditions or the traffic, or it's depend on the resources required on the machines. If they require more, then if we set it auto scaling, then it will automatically increase or decrease the resources. Next, we have AWS Cloud Trail. So what exactly the AWS Cloud Trail service? So AWS Cloud Service provides us to the better visibility about the user's activity, or we can say the services activity, what kind of actions it has been taken for the services. It can, as we know, we can manage our services through, it can be used by the users or the APIs, that is our programming interface, to connect through the services, what kind of actions we are taking on the services. These all things recorded by this Cloud Trail and mentioned as an event, so it can be used for auditing purpose for in future for the compliance. So this is how we understood about all the services mentioned here. So we have gone through the concept. Now it's time to go through the questions with their explanation. While going through the question, I'll explain all the services in bit detail, and also the explanation of what we did now, it will help you to remember or make the answers correct there. And I'll share some tricks how we can identify and which service need to be used in that particular use case. So guys, now let's talk about this question. In this question, they're asking, as per AWS shared responsibility model, what are the customer's responsibility? We need to identify two options correct out of these five options. So first option, they are talking about physical and environmental security. Next is physical network devices, including firewalls, switches, and other things. Third option is about storage device decommissioning. Fourth option, security of data in transit. Last option, we are having data integrity authentication. See, whenever we talk about the shared responsibility model, either it is in AWS or other cloud providers, so we need to keep two things in mind. One is who is taking care of the whole cloud, means the infrastructure which is created there, and who is need to take care about inside the cloud. Okay, so there are two things of the cloud, inside the cloud. So whenever there are terms or the situation given of the cloud, like who will take care of the security of the physical location of data centers, of regions, or the devices, these all comes under cloud service providers responsibility, not from the customer side. So if you will go through the options, physical and environmental security, it's a service cloud service providers responsibility. So here it is AWS responsibility. Next is physical network devices, including firewall. That is also physical devices. Any device which is physically present in the cloud, it's a cloud provider's responsibility. So it is not also correct choice here. Storage device decommissioning. Storage device is like a physical device, and they want to decommission it. So it's not belongs to us. So we no need to take care of it. So it's also cloud service providers responsibility. Next is security of data in cloud or in transit. See, whatever is related to data, you as a customer, it's your responsibility to take care of that one. So here this will comes your responsibility. So this is correct choice here. Next is data integrity authentication. So this is also your responsibility. Whenever we talk about the physical locations security or take care of this thing related to physical device, everything belongs to them. So they are taking care of that one. We just need to take care what we are going to use there. So data is related to us, that's why it's our responsibility. So here our answer will be security of data in transit. Next is data integrity authentication. So this belongs to us. Now we will talk about next question. In this question, they are asking which of the following is a principle of good AWS cloud architecture design. So the thing is, it's a we can say this question can help you to understand for your solution architect level exam as well, but it's a basic question, so we can consider this question into our cloud practitioner. So the option we are having, first is implement single point of failure. I think this is not correct, because we always try to avoid single point of failure whenever we design or plan anything. So this is not correct. Implement loose coupling. See, loose coupling is something microservices, or right now we are using app modernization where we are using the microservices. What exactly it is? Here the application is divided, or we can say separated in different components, and these components are attached with loosely, these are loosely coupled. Okay, so what is the advantage of this one? If you see, nowadays any application you are using, either it is Netflix, YouTube, or Prime Video, Hotstar, whatever you are using right now, these all the applications running based on microservices. So the thing is, here the application where the data is there, the front end, back end, and the other middleware component, these are loosely coupled. Whenever there is maintenance, they just take care of that particular component, and also it will be maintained in that way or upgraded in that way that still it will not give you the downtime for that one. So this is the advantage. So this is the correct choice for this. Monolithic design is like traditional design we are having, where we are having all the components tightly coupled. Means whenever there is a downtime or the maintenance for any of the component, we need to shut down whole application, and we need to prepare make it ready fully, then only we can make it live. So like our banking systems, most of the time we can see that they go for the maintenance, right? So they can afford that, so they do it non-working hours, that maintenance. So that type of system which is traditionally, which is so that is known as monolithic design. So this is not correct here. Last option we are having implement vertical scaling. As you know, we are having two types of scaling. Vertical scaling comes under, like on a single machine you are increasing the resources, like if you're talking about the CPU, if you are having two CPU, you are increasing or decreasing. It's called a vertical scaling. Next we are having horizontal scaling, where we are putting another instance, same type of instance, all together, either we increase it or decrease. So we always prefer to go with the horizontal scaling. The reason, if we here we are having single point of failure, if something happened wrong with this machine, either it is 16 GB RAM or 100 GB of RAM, it doesn't matter, it will go down. When we are having two machines, if one will down, second will always be up, right? So that's why it's not the good architecture, we can say. So that's why this is also wrong. So we will go with the implement loose coupling here. Let's see the next question now. So let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which of the following is a method of backup available in the AWS cloud. So we are looking for a method where we can keep our backup. So the option we are having Amazon EVS snapshots. Next option we are having availability zones. Third one, Amazon EFS file systems. Fourth one is Amazon Route 53. So before giving it the right answer, let's understand what exactly these services are. So first we are having Amazon EVS snapshot. EVS stands for Elastic Block Storage. So it's a block-based storage system that provides a virtual hard disk inside the cloud. If I'll talk about the availability zone is a kind of a logical location inside the region where the availability zone consists one or more physical data centers, like our organization's office we are having, right? Next we are having Amazon EFS file system that provides file-based storage service, which we can access through the NFS protocol. As far as I know, we can use it uh, as a storage service, but not as a backup service. So it's not correct. Amazon Route 53, it's a DNS service in AWS. So here we are not talking about the mapping of name to IP address or IP address to name, so we can't use it. So this is also wrong. Availability zone, yes, it is used for high availability and fault tolerance, but not for as a backup service. But Amazon EVS snapshot, we can use it as a backup service because it's provide virtual hard disk in the cloud. So our choice for this question will be Amazon EVS snapshot. Let's talk about next question now. What is the term for describing action of automatically running script on Amazon EC2 instances when launched to install software? So the option we are having containerization, golden images, workflow automation, bootstrapping. So let's understand one by one. If I talk about the containerization, it's a process where we convert our application in the form of containers. Then we can launch it through we can create these containers through Docker or other container runtime like CRT, and we are having others containerization platform, or we can say the tools. Next, we are having golden images. Golden images are the snapshots of any pre-configured EVS volume that can be launched to launch new instances. If I talk about the workflow automation, it's actually a process, or we can say the orchestrating automated actions. So this is associated with service such as SAP Autopilot, if you heard about it, or in AWS, it is known as AWS Ops Work. So that is known as a workflow automation. Bootstrapping, yes, bootstrapping is the execution of automated actions to the service like EC2 or any RDS we are having. So the thing is, here they are asking describing the action of automatically running a script on Amazon EC2 instance when launched to install software. So here our choice will be bootstrapping because we are not looking for containerization, we are not looking for the snapshots, we are not looking for any workflow automation like AWS Ops Work do. So here we are looking the service which can help us to automatically run our script when any instance is launched. So here we will go with bootstrapping. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which AWS service or feature helps restrict the AWS service resources and individual API access the user and roles in each member account can access. So the option we are having Amazon Cognito, AWS Seal, AWS Firewall Manager, AWS Organization. So let's understand one by one. First, we talk about the Amazon Cognito. Actually, this service is used for providing your sign in and sign up services for your mobile application. Next, we are having AWS Seal service. That is the service which is security service for protecting against the DDoS attacks, like we are having distributed denial of service attacks we are having on our web application or any resource. So it will stop responding to actual users requests. So the thing is, it is used to protect DDoS attacks. Next service we are having AWS Firewall Manager. That is the service which is used for managing various security services in AWS. And the last service we are having AWS organizations. AWS organizations actually help us to centrally manage and govern our environment as we grow and scale our AWS resources. It uses programmatically we can create new AWS accounts and allocate resources group accounts to organize our workflow. So there are many advantages, or we can say the benefits of using AWS organizations. Actually, it helps us quickly scale our environment, applies policies that give our teams the freedom to build with the resources they need. There are other benefits as well. So here we are looking for the service which can help us to restrict the AWS service resources and individual API access. So that I can see only can be done by AWS organization. If we will as we discussed, Cognito is only for providing some sign-in sign-up services for mobile applications, so it's not correct. It is used AWS Shield services for protecting from DDoS attacks, so it is not looking in the question. And the firewall manager is for the managing security related services in AWS. So our answer will be AWS organizations for this question. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. This question they're asking which AWS service should be used to create a billing alarm. That is very important because every cloud provider asks this question in their foundation exam. So this is one of the important questions. So let's understand the options we are having: AWS Trusted Advisor, AWS Cloud Trail, AWS CloudWatch, Amazon QuickSight. So if we talk about the AWS Trusted Advisors, it's an online tool that provides us real-time guidance how we can help our infrastructure, or how we can provision our resources with the following best practices which is provided by AWS. So it's an advisor service. Next service we are having AWS Cloud Trail. AWS Cloud Trail actually logs the API's activity, whatever actions need to be whatever actions taken by API, it records, or we can say the logs those activities, and we can't use it for any performance or billing metrics. Next service we are having Amazon CloudWatch. Amazon CloudWatch is actually a monitoring and observability service which provides us the data and actionable insights to monitor our application. Also, it collects monitoring and operational data in the form of logs, metrics, and events. So the thing is, this service can be used for billing purpose. Last service we are having Amazon QuickSight. Amazon QuickSight is actually a cloud-powered BI service, business intelligence service, we can say, that makes easy to deliver insights to everyone in our organization. So it's mainly for representation purpose. So it's not correct. If I'll talk about the advisor service trusted, that is also not correct. CloudTrail is not correct because it just logs the API's activities. So it's not correct. CloudWatch is the correct service which can create a billing alarm because it monitors and collects the metrics which help us to generate the billing, and it will send the alarm to us. So this is correct choice for this question. Let's see what we have next. Let's talk about this question. This is one of the important questions, and here we will cover three different gateways, or we can say the connectivity related stuff which is available in AWS. So it's related to networking domain. So the thing is, what they are asking, which of these is an AWS managed service to allow instances in a private subnet to download software patches while denying inbound traffic from the internet. So to understand this thing, we can have, suppose we have an instance. Okay, this is our VPC, virtual private cloud. And here we have one instance with the public subnet. We have another subnet where we host application on this instance. It is with private IP, and here we have the public IP. Okay. Now we want to have connection with the internet. So to connect with the internet, we should have some gateway which provide connectivity between these instances to this internet. So whenever we need to connect instance which is in private subnet to the internet, in that case we use NAT gateway. In this case, what happens? This instance can download anything from this internet, and here we use NAT gateway. It can download anything, but from the internet we can't access this private instance. This instance which is having private IP, so it deny inbound connection. When we have something, we need proper connectivity between the instance. It can be your web server or something with the internet. That means we are looking for bidirectional. In this case, we will use internet gateway. Sorry, here I don't have much space. So whenever we need to connect instance with the private IP or private subnet to the internet, we will use NAT gateway with the instance with private IP. And when we need to connect instance with public IP, means we require bidirectional connection, then we will go for this one. When we need only one-way connection, like we just need to download the patches and we need to deny this connection. So in this case, we will use this one. These two are the managed, comes under managed service. So here they are looking for AWS managed service. NAT instance is something where we install this instance with the NAT AMI, that is some template, and configure this instance for the to behave as a gateway. In that case, we use NAT instance. But here the thing is, here the availability we need to take care everything related to the management side. But here they are looking in the question, they are looking for managed service. So we will go for NAT gateway for here, not the NAT instance. AWS Direct Connect is something when our organization, this is our organization, and want to connect with AWS it is dedicated connection, it is super fast, but it's gonna take some time to make this connection. But it is used for dedicated connection, or we can say the expansion of our organization, and we can rely on the connectivity like speed and all. In this case, we will use AWS Direct Connect. So here we talk about three types of connection. When we talk about we need to connect AWS with our organization, then we will use AWS Direct Connect. When we need to connect our instance in a cloud, means in AWS, to the internet with the bidirectional connectivity, then we will use internet gateway. When we need to use only for downloading the patches and all, then we will use net gateway. For this question, our answer will be net gateway. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about another important question which is related to network domain. Which of these is used to control traffic in and out of a subnet? So there are two things. We can restrict traffic based on at two places. We can say, suppose this is our subnet where we are hosting our instance, and this is the VPC. So the thing is, here they are talking about we need to control traffic here itself, not at this level. So first we have the option like security group. This is kind of a virtual firewall, we can say, and it's traffic, manage traffic in and out at the instance level, or we can say the AWS resource like EC2 or the DBs. If we want to restrict traffic or control traffic on these resources here, then we will use security group. Next thing, network access control list. Yes, this is the thing which will help us to control traffic in and out on a subnet level. So for this question, our answer will be network access control list. AWS Direct Connect, when we need to connect our organization to AWS Cloud with the dedicated connection, then we will use AWS Direct Connect. AWS Managed VPN is something when we need to connect our organization to AWS, but it is not dedicated, it's a VPN based, or we can say software defined. So this is normal VPN connection. So for this question, here we want to control traffic in and out of a subnet level, then the answer for this one will be network access control list. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this important question. Again, it is from the networking. So the thing is, which of these allows you to connect VPCs from same or different AWS account, or we can say across regions, to enable private communication between the connected VPCs? VPC is a virtual private cloud. The option we are having: VPC peering, VPC flow logs, AWS Direct Connect, security group. So first, let's understand the requirement, what they are asking in the question. So the thing is, as you know, our infrastructure is like we can have multiple regions. Like suppose this is a region 1, we have another region, that is region 2. Inside regions we have availability zone. Don't talk, we are not discussing that thing right now here. So the thing is, suppose we have two VPC here, VPC 1 and VPC 2. Similarly, we have VPC 3 and VPC 4 here. So the thing is, sometimes we want to connect these VPC, so our communication will be faster and it will be private. Even these are located different on different location, but we don't want our communication will go through the internet. It should go directly. So the thing is, we have two types of peering. When we connect these two VPCs, we have two types of. When we connect VPCs within a region, then it's called local VPC peering. Okay. When we connect VPC from one region to another region, like this connection, it's a remote peering. So in this question, what they are asking, allow us to connect VPCs from same or different. They're talking about in common. It can be this one, same VPC. It can be from different across regions. So the thing is, this service is known as a VPC peering service. So our answer for this question will be this one, correct answer. This is not correct, because VPC flow log is actually enables logs to debug the problems. AWS Direct Connect, we know it is to connect our organization to AWS. And it's a dedicated connection or dedicated pipe, we can say. Security group we already discussed. This is a virtual firewall which control traffic in or out from the AWS resources like EC2 or the databases. So the thing is, it's a virtual firewall, so it is not correct. This is the direct connection, it is not correct. So whenever we need to connect two VPCs, either it is from the same region or different region, that term is known as VPC peering. So the thing is, here we covered multiple services related to networking. That's why I told this question is very important. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. This question is important in terms of exam. So the question they are asking, which of these AWS services help us to connect AWS with on-premises? That means here we have our organization that is on-prem, and here we have AWS, and we need to connect these two, or we can say we need to expand our infrastructure or our organization with the cloud capability. Then we use these connections. So what other services can be used here? So we have AWS Direct Connect, we have Internet Gateway, AWS Managed VPN, Net Gateway, Net Agents. So let's talk about one by one. AWS Direct Connect. Yes, this is the service which helps us to connect these two, and it's a dedicated connection. That means the AWS will install the cables between your organization and AWS. Okay, so we will have the proper high performance connectivity, and it's like a LAN connection, we can say, once it is established. So we can access AWS resources easily from here. Next, we have Internet Gateway. This is not the service which can be used to connect our on-prem. This is the service which is used to connect through the internet. When we want our resources to connect through the internet, bidirectional connection we need it, then we use internet gateway. AWS managed VPN, yes, this is the connection which we can use to connect our organization to AWS. So for this question, our answer will be AWS direct connect, AWS managed VPN. VPN is something software based, like some settings need to be done or some component need to be installed at both the places, either it is client or the AWS side. And when we talk about the AWS direct connect, it's a dedicated connection, it is software defined connection. So let me make it dotted. This is AWS managed VPN. Next is net gateway. Net gateway is also used to connect through the internet, our AWS resources. But here, suppose we have the virtual machine here, we want to connect through the internet, but we want to use this connection only for downloading purpose, like patches and all. So the thing is, it is one-way connection, and another way from the internet we can access these AWS resources. In that case, for that connection we use net gateway. Net instance is something where we can, this instance can be installed with the net template, that is AMI, and we can configure to work as a gateway. It is AWS managed service. This one manually, we need to manage it manually. So I hope these all services are clear to you, and for this question our answer will be AWS direct connect and AWS managed VPN. So let's see what we have next. Let's talk about this question. In this question they are asking which of these AWS services integrate with storage and database services in AWS, and these storage and databases are Amazon S3 and DynamoDB, etc., to provide you with option to encrypt your data. So the option we are having: AWS KMS, KMS stands for key management system, AWS Shield, AWS Web, that is Web Application Firewall, or Amazon Massive. So to understand these questions, we need to understand these all services. What are those? So it will be easy for us to understand. So first we will talk about what exactly AWS Web is, that is Web Application Firewall. It is actually protect us, as it is mentioned, the web application, right? So this service protects our web application from OWASP, that is stands for Open Web Application Security Project. So there are many risks are there. So this web application firewall help us to protect from most critical security risk to the web application. And also the example of those risks, or we can say the critical security risks, are like SQL injection, or we have cross-site scripting, etc. Whenever you heard these name, SQL injection and cross-site scripting, these are the most critical security risks for the web application. So whenever you see these things in the question, directly you can go for web application firewall. So here we are talking about the encrypting your data, so this is not the correct choice for this question. Next we will understand what exactly the AWS Shield is. AWS Shield service help us to protect our environment from the DDoS attack. DDoS is distributed denial of service. So to understand, if they want to restrict your want to stop your servers to respond, so what they in this case they do, they start sending traffic to the same servers again and again through the script. So that means what it will do, as we know our servers work in a first in first out based. So in that case what will happen, our server will get hung and it will not respond to the actual request. So this is how DDoS works. So it helps us to protect from such attacks. But here we are talking about the encrypt your data, so this is also not correct here. Now we will talk about what is Amazon Massive services. So Amazon Massive is actually a fully managed data security and privacy service. So what is this service? Data security and privacy service, and it uses machine learning to identify sensitive data in our Amazon S3. Okay, so it is normally a data security and privacy service, and we use it when we migrate data to AWS using S3. So in this case I don't think so it is best suitable, so we will not go with this option. We will go with this option because it is key management system for AWS, and this is the right choice for this question. So let's understand what exactly this service is. AWS KMS service help us to generate, store and use our keys in AWS. That will help us, these keys will be used to encrypt our data. So this system, or we can say the service, help us to generate, store and use our keys. So this is the characters, and those keys can be private or public, that's dependent on the requirement, and it helps us to encrypt our data. So this is the right choice for this question. So why I explain these questions on these services, in next few questions we will all will be based on this one, so it will help us there to answer quickly. Now let's talk about next question. Now in this question what they are asking, which of these AWS services can be used to protect Amazon route 53, that is route 53 is like a DNS in AWS, CloudFront EC2 instances and Elastic Load Balancer from the distributed denial of service attacks. As we already know that for DDoS we use AWS Shield service that help us to protect our environment from DDoS attacks. In our environment the component can be Amazon route 53, CloudFront EC2 instances or the Elastic Load Balancer. These are the components which can be protected by AWS Shield service for the DDoS attack. We have already described what is AWS web service. It helps us to protect our web application from the SQL injection or cross-site scripting attacks. So this is not the correct choice for this one. If we have already talked about AWS KMS, that is key management service, which helps us to manage key. That means that it helps us to generate, store or use our keys in AWS. If we talk about this one, AWS Cloud HSM, that is hardware security module, this is also a type of key management system in AWS. The only thing is it is single tenant, or we can say the dedicated single tenant HSM. For regulatory or compliance purpose we use it, and this one is multi-tenant. That is the only difference, and both the services are kind of a key management service that help us to generate, store, use or replace our keys in AWS. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking which of these AWS services can be used to protect your web applications from common vulnerabilities, exposure, information security vulnerabilities, and exposures. The option we are having: AWS KMS, AWS Cloud HSM, AWS Shield, AWS Web Application Firewall. As we already know that first two services are the key management service in AWS. The only difference is it is multi-tenant, it is single tenant, and these are used to manage our keys within AWS. Also, these will be used to encrypt our data. So these two are not correct choice for this question. And we already know that AWS Shield is used to protect from DDoS service. So this is also not correct, because this is used to protect our environment, not the web application. And in the question, if you see, can be used to protect our web application from the CVE, information security vulnerability. That means we are talking about to protect our web application. So directly we can go for AWS Web Service, that is Web Application Firewall. So this is correct choice for this question. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. This question they are asking which of these is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activities and unauthorized behavior to protect our AWS accounts. The option we are having: AWS Shield Service, AWS Web Service, AWS Messy Service, Amazon Guard Duty Service. So we have already understood that what exactly the AWS Shield Service is. It is for protecting our environment from DDoS attacks. So in this case, it is not correct. Web Application Firewall to protect our web applications from the critical risk like CVE, SQL injections, or we can say cross-site scripting. So this is also not correct. Here we need to identify which is a threat detection service that continuously monitor for them. As if we talk about Amazon Messy, this is also not correct, because it is fully managed data security and privacy service which uses machine learning to identify sensitive data in AWS or Amazon S3, and it will be used when we migrate data to AWS. So this is not correct here. So the correct answer will be for this question will be Amazon Guard Duty. Let's understand why. Because Amazon Guard Duty is continuously monitor the AWS environment for the suspicious activities like intelligent threat detection, and also it helps us to analyze AWS Cloud Trail events, or we can say VPC flow logs. So this is correct choice for this question. Now we will talk about next question. In this question, they are asking which of these AWS services are used to manage keys used for encryption in AWS. We need to choose two options out of these. The first option they are talking about AWS KMS, AWS Cloud HSM, AWS Shield Service, AWS Web Service, that is Web Application Firewall, or Amazon Messy Service. As you know, we are looking for the services which manage keys. So we have two services here, that is Amazon KMS and AWS Cloud HSM service. What is the difference here? Both the services are used for generate, store, use, or we can say replace keys in our AWS. The only difference is it is multi-tenant and it is for dedicated single tenant. For this question, these two are correct. These are not correct here, because AWS is for protecting our environment for distributed denial of service, Web Application Firewall to protect our web application from the CSS, that is cross-site scripting, SQL injection, or we can say CVE, information security vulnerabilities. Amazon Messy is not correct, because it is a service, fully managed service for data security and privacy, and it uses machine learning for identifying sensitive data in Amazon S3, and it will be used when we migrate data to AWS. So that's why it is not correct. Let's see what we have next. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which of these AWS services is a dedicated single tenant managed service for managing your keys in AWS. So here we are looking for key management service, okay, but the thing is it should be dedicated single tenant. So the option we are having: AWS KMS, AWS Shield, AWS Cloud HSM, AWS Web Service. As we already know, AWS Shield is for DDoS attack, so it is not correct. It is for web application protection, so it is also not correct. CSS or SQL injection, or we can say CVE, information security vulnerabilities. Here it is stand for common vulnerabilities exposures. So the thing is we are left with two options. Both are key management system. So here we are looking for dedicated. So our choice will be AWS Cloud HSM service, not the KMS, because it is multi-tenant. Let's talk about next question now. Talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which of these allow you to execute commands and create a script to interact with AWS services from the command line. So the options we are having: AWS CLI, CLI stands for command line interface, AWS Management Console, AWS Management Console mobile application, AWS SDKs. So we know that we can access our AWS environment through three ways. Either we can use the console, where we can have a look on all the services and manage those services. That is known as AWS Management Console. It's like a GUI platform to access these services, not the command line. So this is not correct. AWS Management Console for mobile application, it is also a GUI tool which we can use to access or manage few services only. So here we can use only select services, selected services to manage. Like if you want to manage your billings and all, you can manage on the go. So it will give us the flexibility to access the services, AWS services, and manage them through our mobile application. So this is not correct here. If we will talk about AWS SDK, it's help us to access, or we can say manage AWS services through the programming language. Like we can write our code in Java, JavaScript, Python, or Go language, and we can use AWS APIs within our application to access or manage the AWS services. So through the programming language, or we can say the AWS APIs, we can use it, and we can write our code in any programming language. It can be your Java, JavaScript, Python, or Go language. It can use any of the language, and we need to integrate it in our applications. Through that, we can access, or we can say manage the AWS services. So here we just need to execute the command and create a script to interact with AWS services. So this is not correct, because here we are not creating code through any programming language. So in this case, the correct choice will be AWS CLI. I know this question is very simple and easy to understand, but I just try to explain all the services, so it will help us in future questions. So at the time, we will take less time. So what is the feature of AWS CLI? It helps us to execute commands. We can execute the commands. We can create scripts, and also we can for this one we can use IAM users credential, or we can say access key IDs and secret access keys to execute this thing. So this is the correct choice. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking which of these not a recommended principle for architecting cloud applications. So here we need to architect the cloud application. So what is not the recommended principle? Build loosely coupled applications, deploy your application to multiple availability zones, automate recovery from the failure, use on-premises for the backup. So the correct answer for this one will be use on-premises for the backup, because that is not a recommended solution. If you are planning or architecting cloud application, we should think about the cloud services. We should not think about backup data in our on-premises environment or within our organization's environment. So this is correct. Automated recovery from failure, always be planned for this one. So this is correct recommended principle. Always to protect our environment from the failure, we should deploy our application in multiple availability zones. So if something happened wrong with the one availability zone, we can have access to our application from the another availability zone. What is build loosely coupled application? Suppose in early days, or we can say our legacy application, our application was tightly coupled. Means we have all the components tightly coupled with each other, like our web application, our storage, our databases, whatever thing it is required, it is integrated with each other and it is tightly coupled. So what is wrong with that method? So whenever we need to keep down one of the components, suppose we want to upgrade the database version, in that case what happens, we need to shut down or stop all the services, then only we are able to upgrade it. But in loosely coupled, what happens, it's a kind of a microservices, we can say it's a microservices architecture that is loosely coupled. What happened in this case? What happened, now we have the flexibility, these all the components work together, but these are loosely coupled. So if we want to upgrade this version, we are still able to do it, and other services will still work. Only this service will not work for the timing, or we have other options as well where it will work in parallel. We are upgrading other systems. So in this way, it works the loosely coupled application. So this is how we choose the correct answer for this question. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking which of these AWS services allow you to automatically increase and decrease the number of EC2 instances based on the number of users using our application. The option we are having: AWS auto scaling, AWS Cloud Trail, AWS Lambda, Elastic Load Balancer. See, here we are talking about the service which can help us to automatically increase and decrease. That means here they are looking for the function called scaling. So if you see the options, we have only one, that is AWS auto scaling. So this is correct choice. But if we will talk about these other options, let's talk about one by one. First, we will talk about Elastic Load Balancer. It helps us to share load between the servers. So the thing is, in the backend we have multiple servers, and this ELB load balancer is in front of that one. So our request will go to this ELB on the basis of the free resources. This will send the request to the best server which can occupy that request. So this is how ELB works. If we will talk about the AWS Lambda, it's a serverless technology, and the thing is, here we just need to define the code and we can execute those code, and we don't need to worry about the underlying hardware, or we can say the server, and we just need to pay how long our code will run and how many requests it is taking. So this is also not correct here. If we will talk about AWS Cloud Trail, what it do, it helps us to governance, compliance, and operational and risk auditing purpose for our account. What happens, it takes action by the user. If any action is taken by the users or the role or any AWS service, this service Cloud Trail will log those records as an event. So it will record as an event. So in this way, it helps us for the auditing purpose. What exactly these events having? These events include action taken in the AWS management console or through the command line, or we are taking the action through the AWS SDK. So whatever action is taken through these medium, what we are having to access the AWS services or the resources, we can say. So it will record all the actions as a event. So it will help us in future for the auditing purpose, that help us to make our environment, or we can say our organization, compliant in terms of for the security purpose. So now let's talk about next question. So let's talk about this question. This question they're asking, compared to the traditional approach like data centers, how is cloud different? Here the traditional approach is like our organization, where we used to host everything in our environment, and the location is known as a data center, where we kept all the servers, host all the server, where on those servers application is hosted. So the question is asking how the cloud is different from the traditional environment. So the option we are having increased capital expenditure, that is in short capex, and reduced operational expenditure, that is opex. That means increased capex, reduced opex, reduced capex and increase opex, reduce capex and reduce opex, increase capex and increase opex. So to understand this question, we need to understand these two terms very effectively. That is, first is capex, what exactly this capex is, and we need to understand what is the opex is. So it is the short form of capital expenditure, it is the short form of operational expenditure. So whenever we deploy or prepare our environment in our organization, there are two costs involved in that. One is capex. Capex is something where we need to pay everything in advance. Suppose we want to host any application, for that we request some server, right? So to in our environment, what we normally do, we request for that, then we purchase that server. In simple term, we purchase that server and we need to pay for this server. And whenever we purchase this server, we always go for the higher capacity than our requirement. We always think about the future purpose. OPEX is something operational cost, like after purchasing that server, everything is installed. Now you need the human resources, right? Your employee, your engineers, where you need to pay salary on month basis. There are some other expenses related to this, like power supply, you need to pay air conditioners to cool down these servers, and so these maintenance tasks or maintenance pay, it involves some cost, right? That type of cost which we use to spend to run function our work. So that cost comes under OPEX. So here what they are asking, if we are moving, how cloud is different than the traditional environment. So the thing is, when we are in our environment, what we used to do, we spend more capex because we need to purchase everything. Once the server is ready, we are using that thing. After that, we no need to pay for that particular service. So capex, OPEX is less there, capex is more. But when we go to the cloud, what happens? This we no need to worry about the capex, because cloud service provider take care of everything. Our task is something, once we take that server, then we start using it, we just need to pay whatever we use it. So the thing is, our OPEX cost will be increased and capex will be reduced. So the answer for this question will be reduce capex and increase OPEX for this question. This is how cloud makes the difference from the traditional environment. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. This question, they're asking you design an application in the cloud to be able to automatically recover from the failures of one or more component. This is an example of high performance, high scalability, reliability, or high security. As we know, as a designer, we need to design our infrastructure or architect our infrastructure in a way that it should be highly performance, highly scalable, reliable, high available, and highly secure. But here the thing is, what is the ability to automatically recover from failures of one or more components? That means we are having something reliable. So the answer for this question will be reliability, because here we are assuring that if in case your application is get failed due to some component, then it will be automatically recover. So we are making our environment more reliable. When they are talking about the performance, then we need to choose this thing. When we need to talk about how we can increase the number of resources or reduce the number of resources, that comes under scalability. And when they talk about how we can make our environment more secure, then it comes under high security. But when they are talking about which is having the ability to recover from infrastructure or application related issue, then we will go with the reliability. So our answer will be reliability for this question. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they're asking which of these AWS services is an example of a serverless service. The option we are having: AWS Elastic Beanstalk, AWS Elastic Container Service, AWS Lambda, AWS EC2, that is Amazon EC2, that is EC2 stands for Elastic Cloud Compute. So the thing is, before understanding about the options, we will go through these services one by one. But before that one, we need to understand what exactly the serverless service is. Serverless service is something we can run our application with the code without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. As we know, we can't run any application without server. But the thing is, why it is known as a serverless service? Because here we are not worrying about the underlying hardware or the server, because whatever we just need to pay in this case for the timing our code will run. So the thing is, whatever server used by our application is provided by the cloud service provider. CSP, in this case we have AWS, right? It will provide the server. We just need to launch our code and run our code. After that, we just need to pay for the time our code will run. So we just need to pay for that one, and we need to worry about our code. We no need to worry about this underlying infrastructure or the server. That's why this service is known as a serverless service. Now we will understand what are these services are. First, we have AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So with the Elastic Beanstalk, we can quickly deploy and manage application in AWS Cloud without having to learn about the infrastructure that runs those applications. So it's like a simple service, easy to use service, and there are many advantages of this. The advantages are like it's a fast and simple to begin. It's a make our developers more productive, and it is impossible to out because Elastic Beanstalk automatically scales our application up and down based on our application specific need. Also, it has complete resource control. So this is how we define the AWS Elastic Beanstalk, but it is not the serverless service. So this option is out of scope for this one. Let's talk about next service, that is Elastic Container Service. So Amazon Elastic Container Service is similar to Kubernetes. Amazon ECS is a fully managed container orchestration service that makes it easy for us to deploy, manage, and scale containerized applications. So it's another form of Kubernetes in AWS. AWS Lambda is a kind of a function where we need to run our code and we will get the output of that one. Means it is used for our application, and here we no need to worry about the serverless server underlying infrastructure. So this is the option. We can say it is for serverless service. It is the example of serverless service, like we have Azure function in Azure, Microsoft Azure. In AWS, it is AWS Lambda. Last option we are having Amazon EC2. It's like a virtual machine in the cloud where we use to host our application or run our application or do our day-to-day work. It's like a simple virtual machine in AWS, which is accessible through the internet. Let's talk about next question now. This question is again related to AWS Lambda. In this question, they are asking, when using AWS Lambda, which of these do you pay for? Number of servers used, number of load balancer used, number of requests, duration of the request, number of EC2 instances provisioned. As we already understand that AWS Lambda is a serverless service. So here we are not worried about the how many servers used, we are not worried about how many load balancer used. Also, we are not worried about the how many virtual machines or EC2 instances provisioned for this to host our application or run our application. So here we need to worry about, or we can say we just need to pay for the number of requests, how many requests we are doing. So this is correct, and duration of that request, how long our code will take time. That means for the time our code will run, we are utilizing those servers, but we are not paying for that server. We are just paying for the code which will run for the duration. So this is how we tackle this question. So we just need to understand, that means the duration of the request and number of requests. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. If you will understand this question clearly, then it will be easy for you to answer next 3-4 questions. So this is one of the important service like storage, one of the core service where we store application data and other related storage. So in the question they are asking, which of these storage services can we use to host a static website in AWS? The option we are having Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon S3, Amazon Elastic File Systems, AWS Storage Gateway. So before answering this question, let's understand one by one each service. So if we'll talk about the Amazon Elastic Block Store, it's actually an easy to use high performance block storage service which is normally used for our virtual machine like Amazon EC2 in our Amazon environment. So it's the attached storage with the instances, means our virtual machine. So whenever we so it is directly attached to the machine, so it is providing high performance. So Elastic Block Store can have on SSD based or it can be on HD based. So whenever we use for the general purpose or provisioned IOPS where we require highly performance, we use HDD based. If whenever we require throughput optimized or the cold storage kind of purpose, then we use normal hard disk space like HDD based Elastic Block Store. Next is Amazon S3. It's the storage service which can have any kind of data. So the thing is here, for the static website, we can have images, we can have the text. So multiple different types of objects we can have in a static website. So this website can be hosted in Amazon S3. So for this question, our answer will be Amazon S3. Let's talk about Amazon Elastic File System. As the file system you mentioned, it is related to the file service. Like we have the file server, right, where we use to mount our storage with the machines. So this is the same like that file server. What exactly the AWS storage gateway? It's like a hybrid cloud model. We can say hybrid cloud storage service which is provided by AWS. So where we have the application running in our organization and we want to use unlimited cloud storage, then we can use this AWS storage gateway. So it's a hybrid cloud storage. Just understand these things, it will help you in next 3-4 questions. So it is attached to the VM and it can be HDD based or it can be SSD based. Here S3 actually stands for simple storage service where we can store any kind of data. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking which of these can be used to create a file share to share files between multiple EC2 instances. The options are Amazon Elastic Block Store, Amazon S3, Amazon Elastic File System, Amazon Storage Gateway. So now you understood why I asked this. That question is very important because here we are covering 4 different storage services based question. So for the file servers, we will use Amazon EFS server. Let's talk about next question now without wasting time. In this question, they are asking which of these provides hybrid storage, AWS plus on-premises, that is your organization, for application running on-premises. So as we already understood this thing, it's the example of AWS storage gateway that provide hybrid cloud storage. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they're asking you need to store archives for 10 years for regulatory compliance. Which of these AWS services provide you storage at the lowest cost? So we need to understand where we use it. As they are saying that we need to keep our data for 10 years for the compliance purpose. So normally you have an example of our emails, right? Where we keep there is one folder called archive, right? Where we use to host our old emails. So whenever we need it in future, we can have access to it, but it is a bit slow here. So similarly, whenever we need to keep data that is not regularly used, or we can say it's not frequently used, then we keep this data in this archive storage. For AWS, that archive storage is known as Amazon Glacier. Whenever there is slightly difference between the Amazon S3 and Glacier. Glacier is cost effective and used for longer period of time. Whenever we need to keep data for longer period of time, we use Amazon Glacier. And it's not like we can't use it for frequently access like normally with our VMs to do regular transactions. But Amazon S3 is frequently, whenever we need to access data frequently, like our website, we had an example of a static website, right? So for that purpose, we use Amazon S3. Whenever we need storage with our hard disk or SSD, like with our laptop or desktop, similarly we have elastic block store for that one. And when we need to use cloud storage with our application which is hosted in our environment, we use this one, hybrid cloud storage. So these are the 4 services related to storage we covered in these 4 questions. So guys, that's it in this video. I hope you like the content of this video. This video will definitely help you to learn about the AWS services, how to tackle the questions. It will help you to build your tricks so you can remember these services for longer period of time, and it will help you during your exams as well. So if you find it helpful, then don't forget to click on like button, share with your friends, as we know that good deeds always work for you whenever you need it. So just try to help as much as, and subscribe this channel for more content. So see you in next video. Keep learning, keep growing.